Hello, if you've just joined us, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, with me, Sharad Kutan. The COVID-19 pandemic is set to change the higher education landscape, both locally and globally. Institutions of higher learning that were perhaps in distress before the pandemic may not survive the added financial and enrollment pressures, and even the strongest of universities are likely to see transformative changes. How will these changes impact students, faculty, admin staff and alumni? Joining us on the line now to explore this further is Najmie Noordin, Chief Operating Officer of Cosmopoint, Sdn Bhd. Najmie, good evening. Thank you for joining us on the show tonight.
Good evening, Melissa.
Now, there are, as I understand it, 20 public higher education institutions in Malaysia and 447 privately owned ones. Najmie, are we likely to see this number shrink, either through consolidation or through closures of those without the financial wherewithal to survive the pandemic? What do you think?
The short answer is very likely. The long answer would be it is a long-standing issue since the early 2010s, where we have a problem of overcapacity and a flattish growth in the number of students. It is likely that consolidation was supposed to happen in the next few years. That's already been discussed at the Ministry of Higher Education level in previous years, but it will be accelerated due to this pandemic.
So, from your point of view, is this a welcome moment for change within the industry, for rationalization, or do you see some downsides to something like the pandemic pushing for these changes?
I think first, this is not a situation that is good for anyone, regardless of whether there needs to be a consolidation. You want the consolidation to happen through a more structured process rather than forced in this manner. Because we are talking about 700,000 students in the private higher education institutions, more than 23,000 academicians, and thousands more of support staff. So if we were to say that this is a good thing, then it is a bit disrespectful, I think, for them and also for the students. But in the long term, I think a lot of the players themselves admit that we have too many universities and colleges in Malaysia.
Right. Najmie, can we talk about the specific challenges that institutions of higher learning are facing because of this pandemic? Now, I'm wondering whether universities and university colleges have the autonomy and the flexibility in coming up with practical solutions in dealing with some of these challenges.
Alhamdulillah, I think both the Ministry of Higher Education and the Malaysian Qualifying Agency, MQA, has been quite open to the idea of us delivering the content, the teaching and learning in various methods. I guess it is up to the institutions themselves whether they have the nimbleness and the flexibility to change their methods. For us, for example, because we have campuses all around Malaysia, therefore the challenges for each of these locations are very, very different in terms of the access to online materials, etc. So we have the flexibility. It is whether or not the institutions themselves are flexible enough to adapt to this current situation.
Right. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the issues with online learning. I mean, there's so many, right, for students, for faculty, but most institutions are kind of built for physical teaching and physical learning. Even the online learning is structured to have some kind of FaceTime, one-on-one FaceTime. And for faculty, I'm sure many of them have to actually go to the campus to conduct their courses and their classes. So how can universities and institutions of higher learning adapt to this if they are infrastructurally built for physical learning?
I guess that's the big challenge right now. How do we deliver the teaching and learning in a way that the students themselves feel engaged and which the lecturers or the academicians themselves are committed to? And it's true, Melissa, that a lot of, even for my institutions, I mean the institutions under our management, it is totally built for face-to-face teaching and learning. But I think the adoption of technology forced by the pandemic has so far been quite acceptable by a lot of the students. Obviously, it's not ideal. There are various issues. For example, I think internet connectivity is a huge, huge problem. So every time people say go online, there's a big difference between having access to internet and having access to quality streaming connectivity. And a lot of the lectures, if you were to do streaming via Zoom or Google Classroom, a lot of the areas in Malaysia are still not at the level, the infrastructure is still not at the level where students can access. And most of them, for us especially, the B40 segment, they may not even have laptops, so it's purely a mobile experience for them. So we have adapted, we've used a lot of the other infrastructures, even up to WhatsApp, to deliver some of our content. And
can I interrupt you right there? You penned a opinion piece recently about the challenges faced that are going to be faced by the institutions of higher learning, and you flagged the oncoming recession and the question of employability of kids now invested in these education in these courses, and you had a proposal. Could you tell us what that proposal was?
Yeah, I think. Previously, there's a lot of discussion on graduate employability. A lot of effort has been put in to change the curriculum, but it takes time. Now that the pandemic has come and we are foreseeing a recession, there must be an idea of a jobs guarantee program where the government absorbs excess capacity in the marketplace and place them in projects or initiatives to keep them employed. I give a good example, like, we still need a lot of teachers, especially now with the shortening of the academic year at rural areas. Could some of these graduates who are not trained as teachers, of course, but can they perform a function of tutors to go into the rural areas, paid for by the government, to deliver teaching and learning, to guide the B40 segment out of their current problems?
Okay. Well, perhaps that's for something to consider to deal with the effects of the expected recession. But Najmie, what do you think the Ministry of Higher Education should be prioritizing now?
There's a lot of issues, I think, with adapting to a new ministry, because people forget that in the previous administration, it was just one Ministry of Education. And just as recently as February, it became a Ministry of Higher Education again. So there's a whole lot of adaptation in terms of the kind of structure that you put in place to deliver the best result. For me, the first thing is the safety and health of our students and staff. There needs to be a clear SOP, not just for now, but post the MCO period. Secondly, the current teaching and learning gaps and future teaching and learning gaps because of the things that they missed during these few months of MCO. And third, obviously, is the sustainability of the institutions themselves. You mentioned about 447 institutions, private. A lot of them the balance sheet is stretched already at the moment. We can let them die, which is fair enough. But certain institutions are actually delivering quality education, and perhaps a certain kind of economic package should be given and granted to these institutions.
Najmie, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. Appreciate your time as well as your insights. Now we're going to take a quick break, but after this, more on how institutions of higher learning are adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic. Stay tuned to consider this.